So to complement the Oxford interview video, I ask you guys to submit your questions and your concerns about the Oxford interview, and this is the consequence of all of those comments. So in this video I'm going to be going through potential interview questions, giving you some advice on how to go about answering them, along with just general concerns that you guys had about, say, what to wear and also how to act during the interview. For instance, Whiteside asked, for science interviews, do you need to do any exam-style revision? He asked this because he wanted to focus more on Oxford-style interview questions rather than going through the specification for his A-level course. In a maths interview, they will give you a maths question that might be slightly beyond the scope of your A-levels. For science interviews, they pretty much just ask you problems. For instance, they might give you a maths question, or they might say, hey, what do you think the mechanism is for this particular reaction? This is likely to be beyond the scope of your A-levels in terms of the content that you're required to know. However, they will help you along when you're answering this question. So to answer the question, no, you won't be given A-level style exam questions, so revising for that might not actually be very helpful. However, you should kind of know the content because you'll be drawing on that content and applying it to different types of problems that you've probably never encountered before. Of course, if you do forget a specific little thing, they might just tell you, hey, the formula for this is that, if it slipped your mind, and then you can apply that formula to a science question or say to a maths question and be like, oh yeah, this is how you solve it. Oh wait, this piece goes here, this goes there, that goes there, and then you get this new puzzle, and then they'll be like, okay, let's take that a step further. Now, Ashmeister has been kind enough to ask 6 questions in the hopes that they are also helpful for someone else watching this video, so now I'm going to go through each of them. Now, this is a very good question. How intricately do I need to know the books that I mentioned on my personal statement? And she's wondering, to what extent does she need to know every single different paragraph and what is said on each individual line? And then the added concern with that is if you genuinely can't remember something that you've read, is that really bad? Okay, when you're remembering a text, the important thing to remember is the argument that the author makes. That's the piece of it that's really valuable. So if you're trying to recount Hobbes or Locke, you want to know their core arguments. So if you are going to prepare for the interview, just make sure you know their core arguments about how they say a society should be structured, or how they think people should be punished within a society, or how people think they should be rewarded. I can't remember word for word what Descartes says in his Meditations, but I do know that he wants to cast doubt on everything to try and find some unbreakable truth, or rather unshakable, concrete truth, and then that eventually emerges into I think therefore I am, known as the cogito. So I know the major themes and I can talk about those and criticise them. Because criticising those arguments is what you're going to be asked to do. For instance, I was asked to say something that I thought was interesting about Plato's Republic, and one thing that I could remember off the top of my head was what he said about ideas and the idea of a chair, and how all ideas of chairs that we have around us come from this perfect idea of the chair that exists in some sort of metaphysical plane. So yeah, I remembered that. I didn't remember all the details, but then we started discussing that and getting my opinions as to whether or not that was a good argument, and then seeing how I dealt with criticisms to that argument. But the nice thing is, if you do forget a very particular thing, or you don't know something, the tutor will help you out, because knowing content is far easier than being able to analyse content. And that's a skill that they're focusing on. So to summarise, knowing the key arguments for a piece of text that you have read is quite important, and also being able to critically analyse the arguments made by those authors with your own opinions. And second, if you forget something or you don't know something in particular, the tutor will help you out, because they're not there to judge you for your content, but rather for how you think about that content. This is similar to the last question. For PP, you're kind of expected to know about current events and current affairs, so what if something happens that is quite important that you just aren't completely aware about, like some random revolution or UKIP coming to power? Again, knowing the content isn't the thing that is most important. It's how you take that content and apply it to helping you solve different problems. I didn't know a particular treaty was signed about the environment. The person told me what the treaty was, and I then used that information to reformulate my argument, because it showed that people were changing their attitudes to how they should live a more sustainable life, which meant that my previous argument wasn't as valid. You see how it wasn't necessarily the knowledge that was indicative of intelligence in that scenario? This is also similar to the last question. Could you be asked specifics? For instance, what is the population of the UK? How many people flush the toilet every single minute in just Japan? No, you're not expected to be a data book. You're expected to be a mind that can think for itself and tear apart problems and find the issues with them. That is what they're looking for, whether it be for sciences or whether it be for the arts. This is an extraordinary question, because I think most of you are in this situation. If you cannot arrange a mock interview, what is the best way to prepare? Okay, so I'm going to make 2 suggestions. One's for the humanities and one for the sciences. For the humanities, it very much comes down to your ability to take arguments, pick them apart and criticise them and make them better. So this just means if you want to get better at arguing and analysing arguments, argue, or rather debate. Pick a side for an argument as passionately as you can. Just Go to a newspaper, find a headline and say, I completely disagree with what you're saying and these are my 3 most important points as to why, and this is why I'm going to convince you that this argument is good. Then you want to take the opposite side of the argument and be like, haha, well actually your premise in the first part of your argument was actually completely wrong and unfounded because this is actually the case. This to and fro makes you constantly reassess what you think, and it helps you refine your argument down, and it helps you communicate. And on the note of communication, I highly recommend you do this aloud, because during the interview it will be a talking situation, so if you aren't very good at conveying your points aloud, you should work on that. A great place to get ideas for arguments is to go to the comments section of a particular article that you've read. For instance, go to The Economist, check out the comments, read all the comments. You'll get so many different opinions from people that are pretty smart, sharing them, and you can pick them apart and say, hey, nope, this person's wrong, or hey, nope, I agree with you, Mr. Guangdong. For science interviews, you're going to be solving problems, like actual problems, like differentiate this equation, or add these two together, or hold on, wait, what happens if I have this electron and I throw it at this particular particle? What do you expect to happen? So the best way to get better at solving problems is to solve more problems. To be able to solve a problem, you have to be familiar with the method that you could use to potentially solve the problem, which means that you need to know what differentiating and integrating, completing the square, all those different methods that you use within maths, and also say drawing mechanisms, so chemistry, how best to go about doing that. Why is it that a particular reaction does a certain thing? Or in biology, why is it that a particular animal has evolved in a particular way? You've got to know the mechanics behind it so that you can apply them when you look at a problem. And then you know the methods, so now you need to be able to apply the methods. So this just involves you doing as many different problems for your specific field as possible. This might involve going through a textbook, Googling online for being like, okay, I want to go through and do all vector related questions if you're doing something for maths, and then you'll become better and better and better at spotting little tricks you can do to solve that problem. Also in your personal statement, you've probably mentioned some wider reading that you've done, so do some more wider reading about that. Try and understand the underlying maths and physics and chemistry and biology that is going on for that particular topic, and that will help you with your problem solving. Then try and apply that problem solving to some problems. For instance, like, okay, so this is a case study. What happens if I tweak this one variable? What do I expect to happen? And then see what the answer is. So to summarize the science advice, find more methods you can use to solve a problem and also practice applying those methods, because then you'll get better at problem solving. And then thinking laterally about solving the problems, because that is what you'll be expected to do in the interview. The next question is about waffle. What if you're in the interview and you just keep talking because you want to say something that will sound remotely intelligent and you're nervous and everything is getting to you?